Hello, everybody. Welcome to Wisdom from North, the place where we are exploring and diving into the deeper meaning of life and asking the big questions. My name is Jannike, and on my guest on the show tonight, I'm really honored to be having the highly respected spiritual teacher and author and poet and philosopher, Mark Nepo. Mark has just come out with a book that's called Inside the Miracle, Enduring Suffering, Approaching Wholeness, which gathers 28 years of his work and writings about suffering and wholeness and healing. Mark, it's an honor having you on my show. Welcome.
Well, thank you so much. It's great to be with you. I appreciate it.
Yeah, and I just saw you in the movie The Power of the Heart by Baptiste Pup, which I really loved.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. It's a wonderful movie, and I really encourage people to see it if they can.
Yes, and I would love to speak about the heart today, but also I want to speak about suffering because it's something that we can all relate to. It's something I believe we all have met to different degrees. But I've been contemplating about suffering the last week, especially because of the Paris attack and also about illnesses and how, for each person, it becomes, like this. I At least to me, it becomes this all-encompassing thing. Like my ego is totally out of control in a way. It's
Yeah.
all about my sickness, that I'm being sick, and I have a cold this week. That's why I've been really thinking about it. And I'm curious because you are a cancer survivor, your journey. But before we go there, I want to start with, there was one sentence that I thought was so interesting that you have said. It's that every soul will face a life-changing threshold that will keep shaping who we are for the rest of our lives.
Yes.
What do you mean by that?
Well, let's talk, and this speaks to some of the things you're raising, which are important things to talk about. I believe that each person in their journey will have an opportunity to be dropped into the depth of life, and that's when our all of our deepest journeys really begin, because we're forced to bring who we are inside out to meet life and work with what we're given. And we're asked to be as authentic as possible and to be in touch with life. So, one of the things that really changed the way I see things through my cancer journey is that, and let's say from the beginning here, that while it often involves difficulty or obstacle or suffering, it could just as well be beauty or surprise or being overwhelmed by being in love or the sudden excitement of finding what our gift is. It doesn't have to be, catastrophic.
Oh,
And
okay.
so, that happened to be what it opened up for me, but it doesn't really matter what opens us up. It's what's opened in us that matters. So for anyone, who's watching and listening, it's important to realize we don't have to go out and seek some catastrophic event that's going to open a doorway for us to be fully alive. Like gravity, we can't avoid the friction of life, which for human beings is suffering. In the natural world, we call it erosion. All the elements, they wear down the trees who bend in the wind to beauty. The sea pounds cliffs until they reveal their inner beauty, and then we save up and go on vacation to marvel at them. So, likewise, the very friction of living creates a certain amount of suffering and obstacle and difficulty that wears us to our inner beauty if we can hold each other up to it. And I think that, whatever is larger than us, whatever name you give that, it feels like the mystery of the order of the universe it's made just difficult enough that we need each other.
Yeah.
I think this is to ensure the journey of love. So, the way that coal is pressurized to a diamond, You know, the way we human beings grow usually by two ways. We willfully shed what no longer works, the way snakes shed skin and crabs, or we put down a way of being or thinking or relating that has served its purpose. We shed it like a cocoon, okay? Or we're broken open. And usually it's a combination of both. So when this happens, you know, all of our plans, all of the ways that we understand life, they really don't work anymore. And we have to get even closer to life so that we can learn directly from our direct experience how our life is unfolding, how life is unfolding.
So you mean for every soul, something will happen that will make them question things in their lives and perhaps see things in a different way, like make them closer to a truth in a way?
The journey of being alive, I feel like the soul's one want is for us to be as alive as possible. Where that happens changes. I could be, you know, I'm a writer now, but I could be a gardener tomorrow. If I follow where the aliveness takes me. And so our job is to stay as present as possible so we can follow that aliveness. So different things, you know, in the Hindu tradition, and I love this, the deity Ganesh or Ganesha, which is, have you heard of Ganesh? Do you know Ganesh?
Yes.
Yeah. So Ganesh is the provider and remover of obstacles.
Mm.
So that tells us that's different. In the Western tradition or in the Judeo-Christian tradition, we pray to saints and sages to get us out of trouble. But in the Hindu tradition, Ganesh gives us the obstacles and takes them away. And that tells us that obstacles are teachers. They present themselves in our path so that we can learn and grow. And once we've learned what it is we're supposed to learn, they will stop being obstacles, or we'll realize they weren't obstacles in the first place. It was how we were perceiving them that made them obstacles. So we're challenged by living to return to direct experience and admit that we don't know very much. Admit that, you know, sure, we learn as we go, and I can learn from you, and I can learn from life, but then we're always asked to come back to the moment at hand as if we're Adam or Eve, and we've never been here before. And what is all of this? And how do we move forward? And how do we love? And how do we be real?
Yeah, because you speak a lot about aliveness, and I just saw this talk that Elizabeth Gilbert had, this author of Eat, Pray, Love, and she said she had this wonderful talk where she said she had been talking about follow your passion all the time. And then this woman wrote her this long letter saying that I can't find my passion and you made me feel really bad. And so now she's not saying that anymore. She's saying, you know, just follow your curiosity. And I was thinking about that now because you're saying, you know, whatever makes you feel alive. Like it doesn't have to be one passion that you got, right? Like,
well, yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So, you know, one of the things that for me that I've come to understand is, you know, we are always a mix as human beings of being and doing. There's nothing wrong with either. And they both can lead us to a full life. But our dreams and our goals and our ambitions, I think we're taught to hold on to them too tightly. So, you know, I could express myself, or when I was young, you know, somebody noticed that I could express myself. They said, oh, you should be a writer. Or someone else as a child sings and says, oh, you know, you should become a singer. or someone they loves to have their hands in the earth. They say, "Oh no, you should become a gardener." Well, that's all wonderful, but you notice that what brings us alive is in having our hands in the dirt, expressing ourselves in singing. It's not in becoming anything.
Right.
It's not in so you notice that the aliveness is in the verb. It's in the singing. It's in having your hands in the earth. It's in dancing. It's in loving. It's in watching. It's in, whatever it might be. And then when someone says, well, become a singer, now we become a noun. So it doesn't mean that we don't become these things, but never forgetting that what brings us alive is the embodiment and the involvement and our engagement with life. So it's not about, so let me go back for a second. So, our dreams and our goals and our ambitions, I've come to think of them as kindling for the fire of our aliveness. They're there. We need dreams. We need goals. We need to work toward things to bring our heart alive, to set it on fire. And, often what we dream or work for doesn't come out as we imagined. Sometimes that's disappointing, but it's not failure.
Right, because you're being in it.
Yes, and while often our dreams don't come true by giving ourselves wholeheartedly to what we care about, sometimes we come true, and that's more important.
Right. So I want to go back a little bit to your childhood, because I was curious when I did research on you if the cancer story was this big transformation, or if you were already a spiritual man and a poetic boy. And it seems like you were philosophizing a lot as a child, and that it was there from before.
I think it's in all of us. I think everyone has that inner voice. So let's, as I talk about my own journey, let me just preface it by talking about, the word genius, which in modern times we tend to use as like, someone who has extraordinary brilliance in some capacity, whether it's Mozart or, Stephen Hawking in physics or whatever it might be. But the actual word genius means attendant spirit. This is where the word genie comes from, the genie in the bottle. Right. So everyone alive has an attendant spirit. Everyone has a genie or a genius within them. And we can call that attendant spirit soul, spirit, Atman, Dharma. There are 1,000 names for it. But everybody has it. And so that lifelong relationship with the attendant spirit that we arrive with, that is one of our holiest vows, is to stay in conversation with our attendant spirit, because that's what will lead us to being fully alive. So in my case, I was raised by Jewish parents who grew up first generation immigrants to America from Russia and Romania. They grew up in the Great Depression of the 1920s, so they were very, very concerned about how to make sure we survive, and therefore they were also very, very intelligent, but very literal, very nonfiction, very based. And so they, of course, get a mystical poet for a son.
Yeah. Where did it come from?
Right. And so, at an early age, I think that I always related. I had no words for it. But when I was alone, I was never alone. I was always listening to life speaking to me in nature and the things around me, wherever I might be. And as I grew, to a little boy and a little older, I started to understand that this channel of conversation with life was where I felt most alive and most at home. And so no matter what happened to me, it was important to me to return there. Then when I was, in high school, my first love, and those are always so powerful. And when that ran its course and she left me, I was devastated and brokenhearted, and I didn't have any real friends, close friends, until I went to college. So at that point, I began talking to myself by writing. And so when I started to heal, I learned that I wasn't just talking to myself, I had begun a conversation with the universe. And so, I kept, and only later did I start to understand that, I've always seen the world or through metaphor. It's been in kind of a natural language for me. So I became to understand that I guess I was a poet. Now I understand that poetry is not about words on a page. Poetry is the unexpected utterance of the soul. It doesn't matter whether you write it down or not. And in the beginning, I went to school and I have a doctorate in poetry, and I didn't realize until my cancer journey that poetry was the vehicle for me to discover my spirit. And so, I'm 64, but when I was in my 40s, late 30s and early 40s, I started to understand that I had to shed the identity of poet in order to inhabit my deeper spirit. It was very confusing. But in the way, like when you pot a plant and you water it, and if it grows, you eventually have to repot it. So, as a young man, the identity of being a poet was the first pot in which my spirit grew. And then eventually I had to repot myself because the identity of a poet was too small. Now I'm a poet in how I perceive, but it's all a means for my spirit to be in the world, for me to connect to other spirit.
Yeah, that is what I find so fascinating with life. It's like I think I get something and then it just gets deeper and deeper and bigger and bigger, more and more profound. So it just goes on and it gets bigger and bigger and it totally expands all the time. So how was it like for you to get the message that you had cancer? I mean, apparently you were, in this communication with spirit or with life. Like, did you feel like you handled that better than, perhaps somebody who didn't have that connection, or was it just throwing you off completely?
Oh, it turned me inside out. It didn't, I don't think I handled it any better than anyone else. I think what's important is, I was in my mid-30s and I was teaching at a university, and I was still trying to get my first books published. And I was trying to contribute as best I could and help to change things and contribute to life and the society that I lived in. And then all of a sudden, what? All of a sudden, life was changing me. All of a sudden, I was humbled. I had very little control. All of a sudden, everything became very immediate. And I had never been through anything very physically challenging up to that point in my life, other than, a cold or this, or, breaking a bone in sports or something, or, so all of a sudden, I was terrified of everything that I would have to go through. And I had a rare form of lymphoma, so it wasn't clear what was appropriate treatment for me. So I had to go through a gauntlet of tests and biopsies, and my interesting challenge and karma was that because I was so afraid of everything, I had to go through everything. So because, my it wasn't clear what kind of cancer I had, I couldn't be given anesthetic or anesthesia, because at every point, in case they found something and I needed to be rushed into surgery, they couldn't use it up too quickly. So while I had local anesthetic here and I had different things to calm me down, I had to go through a gauntlet of tests awake and had to face my fear. Or, there were several things. This was a 3-year period, the heat of my journey, and this book gathers, as you said, like 28 years of my exploration into all this, because I think the things that are deepest in us, I've never gotten over having cancer. I've moved through it,
Okay.
and it's changed how I see the world. And again, for me, it happened to be that. It could be anything. And so that's the important thing. There was no normal to return to when I was well again. It's like I went through a door, and I think this happens to anyone, whether it's through grief or loss or sudden surprise or falling in love.
Yeah.
All of a sudden we walk through a door, and that door is removed. There is no way back to the way you lived before.
Yeah, because I heard like people who have had depressions, I've had depressions myself, or people who, had a great grief or lost, were left by their a person they love, or hit the wall in some ways. They feel devastated, but I've heard many say that they feel more whole in a way because they met this. They wouldn't have chosen it away if they could choose again, but it's definitely they have changed, because what I feel that have been depressed is like I always know that I can get depressed again. It's that little fear that
Yes.
can come back.
Yes.
How do you deal with that? That fear that it can come back. Like now I got this cold, and I'm a singer, and I'm on stage every night. So the worst thing that can happen to a singer is that you lose your voice. And what happens? I get sick, and it's funny. Like you were saying that I met my worst fears. My fear has been to get sick, when I'm in a play. And this time it happened. And I'm like, wow.
So these are wonderful questions, and they're things, and I can speak to them. I don't have answers because we're all just comparing notes. No one knows how to do this. But, I feel like this is what I talk about in the book, in an essay called The Terrible Knowledge. And the terrible knowledge is this, both the fragility of life and, terrible is a word that means, we think of terrible as, oh, it's really bad. But it also is rooted in the word awful, full of awe. And life is at once full of awe and amazingly fragile. Every moment is unrepeatable. And this makes life all the precious, and it also humbles us, because anything can happen at any time. And so our challenge is to have the fragility of life mirror to us how precious life is, and not get caught in the mirror.
What do you mean? Like,
not get caught in the side that, yes, it's true that anything can happen at any time, and we could die in a moment. But that's half of the story, and not to get stuck in that half.
Okay.
While it's true, we need the balance, the resilience, and the resource of the preciousness of life in order to be here completely. So it's always a balancing act of not taking life for granted, and not getting stuck in, oh my God, I could die tomorrow, I could walk out, and not getting overwhelmed by the possibilities of fear. And all the traditions, this is why meditation is spoken about in so many traditions, as a way to come back to center, to come back to the moment at hand. Even with your cold, what we're asked to do is let go of our sense, our image of ourselves. We have an image of the way that you might like to sing, preferably, but you're still you. You haven't lost your soul. You haven't lost your passion. You haven't lost your voice, even if it might sound a little different. You still can be you. So I think that some of it is struggling to let go of things as we imagine them, and work with what we're given.
And thanking for whatever shows up in a way, because do you think that there's no coincidence, that it's coming for a reason?
Yes, I do. I think that everything, I mean, not in a reason that is scripted out by some larger authority, but more in the order of things, more in the way that rivers flow to the sea. You know, they're all on course, and the things that fall, you know, branches that fall into the river are taken to the sea. Okay, so I think that we are in the river of life, and we have to find the currents and swim with them, not against them.
Mm.
And so, yes, things happen to us, and I think we're asked to work with what we're given, because by doing that, we discover more deeply what it means to be here.
Mm.
You know, I give you a great story. There was and this was in America in the 1940s. There was a theology student who was studying to be a minister, and he came down with polio. And of all the reactions he could have, you can imagine he was devastated. And of all the reactions he could have to being discovering he had polio, he quit divinity school and he decided he was going to learn how to dance.
Hmm.
And very slowly and very awkwardly, he committed to learning how to dance. Well, over time, he not only cured himself of polio, but he went on to become one of the fathers of modern American dance.
Wow.
This is the story of Ted Shawn, who was the founder of Jacob's Pillow in Massachusetts. So let's talk about a little bit about the rhythm of life and the way that it works in each of us. And that is that we open and we close. You know, we move, we lean in, we pull away. And so, you know, as I'm speaking, my lungs are expanding and contracting. My muscles are expanding and contracting. I'm blinking. And so too the heart. The heart opens and closes. And that's how it pumps blood. And the mind opens and closes. So our challenge as human beings, and is when we're closed, to return to being open. You know, medieval monks, when asked how they practiced their faith, would say by falling down and getting up. I love that. Down and getting up. So we will close down, and we need to develop a personal practice of so that we can open up after we're all this amazing, messy, magnificent journey of being human. So, you know, we all have those days where, you know, I am so attuned that if we were in the same room and you started to spill a cup of tea, I could catch it before it would reach the floor. And then tomorrow I might spill the tea on you. That's because we're human. And so I'm clear and then I go confused. I am awake and then I go numb. So I don't believe in a permanent arrived state of enlightenment, but I believe our journey in being human is that we close and we open, we expand and we contract. And our job is, it's natural that when pain, fear, worry, these all present themselves to us. It's by their nature. The way they say hello is they're all encompassing. And so it's natural to tense, to pull in. But then it's our job, after a while, to open up, to open up. And so one of my deep lessons from my cancer journey was this understanding that to be broken is no reason to see all things as broken. That it's understandable that when you have a cold, you know, when I'm hurting, the whole world is my hurt for the moment. For the moment. And now I need not to, and this is the challenge I've discovered, I need not to drown in my hurt or make the whole world my hurt, and I need not to minimize it. It's both. And we need, you know, when I'm hurting, I need the company of someone who understands what it is to be hurt, but I need everything that's not broken to heal.
Okay.
When I'm afraid, I need the company of someone who understands what it is to be afraid, but I need everything that's not fearful to heal. So, one of I'll give you an example. A few years ago, I had, I'm fine now, but I had a difficult health battle, which was not cancer related, though it stemmed from the chemo I had many years ago. I had a very severe stomach flu, and most people, you recover from it. But because of the chemo I had, and I have neuropathy, which takes a long time, that damage to your nerves from the chemo, that my stomach nerve didn't heal. And so my stomach stopped emptying properly. Now, this is a condition. It's called gastropoiesis, and it can be chronic or it can heal. Nobody knows. And it took about 7 months to heal. So it was very scary and painful to eat very little bits. I lost a lot of weight. So during the summer of when I was going through this, we have bird feeders where I live. My wife, Susan, has all these wonderful bird feeders. And 2 days a year, Baltimore Orioles come. So there they were. And I didn't want to miss them. And I ran to the window, and just as I ran to the window, I had one of these painful attacks. And there you have it. There you have it. Okay? Not to drown in my fear, not to miss the beauty of the Orioles, and not to minimize my fear. And so awkwardly, I didn't do it well, but I had to face my pain and and this is what we're asked to do. We talk about it like today separately when we can, but we're asked in real lifetime to let beauty in while we're suffering. Not, it wasn't just that I wouldn't miss the birds, the beauty of the birds, but that beauty is part of the medicine that heals us. It didn't eliminate my pain, but it right-sized my pain. So this is one of our challenges, is how, yes, feel, another example is when you stub your toe, like on a hike, and you hit a boulder or a big stone. And it's like one of those, for a moment you think you might have broken your toe. That's how much it hurts. And in that moment, forget the day, forget the hike, everything is the pain in your toe.
Yeah.
And then after a while, it starts to subside. It still hurts, but now it throbs. And there we are again. You can't deny the throb, but now you have to realize, the miracle of the day didn't stop while my toe was hurting. The sun doesn't stop shining because people are blind. How do we stay connected, not only to our own experience, but to the resources of life which never stop giving?
Yes, because it's very easy to lose that connection when you meet contrast, like some people are phrasing it, or difficulties, because you feel like the world is going against you, but I do think on a deep level that these are all gifts somehow. But I'm curious about something. Do you think that we can heal from anything? Do you think that humans have the capacity for healing? Like for instance, in my case now, I've been sick for 10 days. I've been on stage and I've been to healers, acupuncturists, everything. And I'm still sick. It's like it doesn't go away. And I've started thinking maybe it just needs to take its time. Maybe I can't have an effect on it. And I'm wondering about when it comes to cancer, because there are cancer survivors, but there are also people who die from cancer.
Absolutely.
So my question is, do you think that sometimes things can't be healed? Like it's supposed to take time, or people are supposed to pass on?
Yes. So let me talk about this by backing up a bit, and then we'll talk about it more specifically. The nature of life is we can participate in healing, accepting that we don't know what the outcome will be. We can't control where it will go, but we can participate in our own journey and in the journey of those we love, and we contribute, but we have to let go that we don't know where that's going to lead. The nature of life, and again, all the traditions speak of it, but the Hindu tradition again has a beautiful trinity that speaks to this of gods in the deities. And that's Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva. That life, by its nature, and we can see this in nature and in human beings, life, Brahma, it is just life force. It has no container yet. And then it comes into being. And it enters you and it enters me, and we are carriers of this amazing life force. And it's in everything. It's in the wires in which we're speaking through. It's in the nature. It's in dogs. It's everywhere. And so then it comes into form. That's Vishnu. It comes into form. It takes life force takes 1,000 forms, and then eventually all the forms decompose so that the life force can re-enter the universe so it can take form again in another lifetime. Not necessarily, oh, I'm going to die and become you. But the life force that I carry when I go, part of me might become the nail that holds a bridge together. Or part of you might become a note in a song you love. Who knows? Who knows? So this is the nature of things. So no one can stop the unfolding of life. A tree grows, it has leaves, then the leaves turn bright, they fall, they die, they turn into mulch, they become fertilizer for the next tree. So no one can stop that process. So we can't do that. We can participate in our own healing, which means, we don't know what it means. It means being as alive as possible on this journey. So things do take time and they take their course. And, I know this very personally, that it's very humbling, that it takes 6 million pollen grains to seed one peony. That's astonishing. It takes so many attempts to sing. It takes so many thoughts like seeds, and you don't know which one will blossom, or attempts at love. This is the nature of life. And so, for the pollen grains that don't become a peony, they might think life is awful. And for the one that becomes the peony, life's a miracle. But it's both. It's both.
So we can't control the outcome, but so we have to actually surrender to life constantly.
Yeah, so I was 10 years out of my cancer journey, and I was going for an annual checkup. And those are always, you say, well, I feel fine, but I don't know, I hope everything's okay. And I was fine, and I left relieved, and I went into the waiting room of the practice, and I was about to go out those doors back into my life when a woman who was waiting for her appointment collapsed in the waiting room. And there was all bells, and people came, and alarms, and they swept her away. And I stood there, and I thought, my God, now how do I go back out into life not thinking of her? How do I not forget that but for a hiccup of the universe, a hiccup of God, I could have collapsed and she could have walked out. And she might be talking to you today. We never know. And we don't have control. And there's no explaining. Why her and not me? There's no explaining. I have stopped asking why and only ask how.
Oh.
Because, at least in my life, asking why only leads to more suffering. These are inexplicable mysteries,
Okay.
you know, and and things are tragic. And so in this way that life dissolves out of forms, okay? Let's talk for a minute about the terrible attacks in Paris and the terrible things that are happening all over the world. Charles Dickens, when he opened his book, A Tale of Two Cities, the first sentence is, "It was the best of times and the worst of times." Now, it's a wonderful novel, but you could have stopped right there. Because that describes every age. It is always the best of times and the worst of times. And, I had a dear friend and mentor who recently died at 102. He was a doctor, he was a painter, he was a child of the Holocaust. And because of his medical way of seeing things, he talked to me once, and this is very pertinent here, and it was his image. He talked about humanity as we're all cells in a global body.
Mm.
And everybody, yours, mine, we all have, and even when we're healthy, there are toxic cells in the body. It's just that there are more healthy cells than toxic cells, so you're in healthy balance. And so now, if we bring that to look at what's happening in the world, ISIS and these terrorists and these people who have lost sight of the value of life, they are toxic cells. Cancer cells in the body. A cancer cell is a cell that will preserve itself. It's a part that will preserve itself at the sake of the whole. It will even eat the body that keeps it alive at all cost. It's an anarchist biological cell. It has no regard for anything but itself. These are cancer cells in the global body. Why them and why not other cells? I don't know why. There's no answer to that. And so there are, just as in the medical model, there are many ways we try to treat disease. The first thing we do is we if necessary, in extreme cases, we have to do surgery. We have to remove those cells from the body. And that's what remains to be seen here, at what level the nations of the world, just as during World War II, when fascism had to be eradicated. This is scary. We don't know what it'll lead to. There is treatment, like in the singular body. And treatment is what? Treatment is education. Treatment is, compassion. Treatment is the healing professions. Treatment is diplomacy. And then there is prevention. And prevention, this is what we're doing. This is what every interview you do is a part of. Because every time we talk like this, or you talk with someone, whether it's on air or not, it's not just self-centered. We are strengthening the immune cells in the global body.
Yes, because I'm realizing that everything that's out there is also in me. Like, that's why I'm talking about my ego getting so strong, because I'm realizing that, I have this ego in me who wants to survive, who wants to do my things. And I don't feel very spiritual then. I don't feel very giving to others, So I think we all have it in us, and I think we need to understand ourselves as human beings, why we do as we do. Because when we are pressed in certain situations, I think we're capable of doing horrible things. But I wanted to speak a little bit before we have to end this about the heart. Opening of the heart, how that can perhaps alleviate pain, or how that can perhaps bring wholeness in the world, or heal.
Well, one of the great gifts, so I believe the heart is the strongest organ we have. It's both precious and unbreakable. And while in my lifetime my heart's been broken many times, and my life a couple of times feels like it's been shattered, and I didn't imagine how it could ever be put back together, I don't know how, but I can say to you that every time so far, Not only has my heart been put back together, it's been stronger, gentler, larger, more loving for it. And I believe the deepest, quietest courage we can have is to keep our heart open, because through meeting life, through letting who we are show itself in the world, we discover that we are the same. We discover that we are parts of the same story. While you may have different details and I may have different details, at heart, each of our lives is a sentence in one story, one eternal story. All the traditions speak about that. When we can open our heart to compassion, we discover we are the same. And this is also one of the purposes of suffering, that when I suffer, then I can never shut out people who suffer in a similar way. Mm-hmm. So, when I have my back is fine, but I was doing some kind of exercise and several years ago and tweaked my back, and for 10 days, I could hardly move. Well, now after that, when I go to the grocery store and I see an older woman who's taking so long to go through the line, rather than be annoyed, I help her with her groceries. Yes. This is what an open heart does. Yeah, we stop treating things around us as objects, and we start to treat things around us as parts of us.
Yes, that is so important. I just observed that I went to this acupuncturist last week, and he really saw me as a person. And I think I became a little bit healed right there and then, because I felt so alone in my sickness and in my story that I had to be on stage. And he really saw me. He was really interested in the history of my voice. I felt so seen, and I reflected upon it. That is so important, that doctors see you as a person, not just another patient.
And that we all see each other everywhere we go.
Yeah.
There's a beautiful, old, still in existence, custom in Africa between African Bushmen. So when one goes out to hunt or gather and then returns toward the village, the first person to see that member of the tribe come back points at them and says, "I see you." And upon being seen, the person coming back lifts their hand up and goes, "I am here. I see you. I am here." Every one of us needs to be seen and heard. And sometimes when I say I see you, it reminds you that you're here. And sometimes you need to say, "Hey, wait, I'm here." And I go, "Oh my God, I see you." But then it brings us, we're present again together. This is wonderful medicine.
I love that. Thank you so much, Mark. This was really wonderful. I loved having this conversation right now. And it felt kind of healing in the situation I'm in right now, which is not anything serious. It's just, it gets really, I'm just fascinated by it. And what I'm most fascinated by is actually that the people I interview always are related to the current situation I'm in my life. It's so synchronistic. And I love that. It's really fascinating. So thank you so much, and good luck with your wonderful work and your book and everything.
Oh, and thank you too. It's wonderful to be a part of this, and good luck with your wonderful thing. And your voice sounds great.
It's getting better. I'm gonna sing tomorrow, so I think it's going to go fine. And thank you so much for watching, guys. And you can follow me on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram. And make sure that you subscribe to my channel if you haven't before. Much light, all the best. Bye-bye.